Hey there, welcome to this week's video blog. Last week we talked about how your picking hand works on the instrument. This week we're going to do a little bit on your fret hand mechanics, actually how your thumb placement should work to make better stretches on the front of the instrument, when you should collapse joints, when you should keep them arched, how much on the fingertips you should play, and all of that happy stuff. So the first thing we're going to talk about today is where we're going to put our thumb. The vertical aspect of this isn't as important, let's come around here this way, as the sideways. If you have your thumb like this, like you're hitchhiking, what's going to happen is it's going to close up how the hand works on the front of the guitar. It's very difficult to make anything really work or to make any wide stretches happen with your thumb sideways. So what I'll typically do is I'll have my thumb more straight up and down. The thumb placement vertically, some of it depends on what kind of music or what kind of technique I'm going to be playing. If I'm going to be playing something that's more scalar in nature, you can't see my thumb too much over the top of the fretboard. If I'm playing bar chords, same thing. You might see a little bit of the tip peeking out, but for the most part, it's going to be more in classical guitar position. If I'm bending a note, I'll have the thumb over the top, and it'll give me some leverage. If I'm playing like a funk guitar part, all of that kind of stuff, the thumb over the top will actually help me mute some strings. It's going to give me a better attitude towards the strings in terms of the angle that your fingers go into it at to allow me to mute a little bit better. It's a lot of benefits I get from having the thumb over the top of the neck. And then obviously, if you're going to play some Hendrix, you can fret a note with your thumb if you're going to play a major chord like that. So the first thing, never have the thumb sideways. All right, and the vertical placement, just figure out what works best for what you're trying to play. Those are kind of the main rules. The other thing that I see people do sometimes that isn't so great is they'll take their thumb and do this with it. And basically what they're doing is they're taking that joint and they're arching it, and that pulls the hand around. So if you keep the thumb flat like this, it's going to help everything work better on the fretboard. So that's the deal with the thumb. Now as far as the fingers go, the one thing that people always start off with that really is not very efficient is that they'll have the hand in such a way where the first finger here is kind of pointing, this direction or back at your head. And what that does is that pulls the hand around like this. All right, so if we're playing open chords, that's not the worst thing in the world. All right, if we're bending notes, that's also not the worst thing in the world for those. But if you're trying to play bar chords, if you're trying to play in position where you're playing one finger per fret, if you're doing scales, if you're note reading in position, any of those kinds of things, it's better to have the thumb or the index finger pointing straight up. All right, and then that'll actually allow the pinky a lot more strength, and it's going to be able to reach things that it couldn't before. I have a pretty wide stretch on the instrument. On the first string, I go from the third to maybe the 8th fret. But you can see, here's where all the stretch is. It's between the first and second fingers. If I play something really wide like that, I'm going to be stretching there. I'm not going to be here and then trying to reach with the pinky. So that's the first thing about wide reaches. And even just being able to play one finger per fret. I have students where they really struggle with this sometimes. And the problem is their hand will be rotated around like this. And then, why can't my pinky reach that, that fret right there? Well, I'll just rotate the hand around. You'll also see there's all of this space here. All right. What we have, if I'm playing on that first string, let's see if we can get a better angle on the instrument here. You can see that there's this cup right here. Right. I'm not touching the bottom of the fretboard. If I've got my fingers on the bottom of the fretboard or this part of your hand, what happens is once again the fingers get all crunched up. They're not able to move. If I keep the hand open, then all my single note quick stuff actually happens pretty good. When I'm playing an open chord, you'll see that there's the space right here. I'm actually touching the bottom of the fretboard right here with the kind of the side of the hand, and then the angle of this falls away from the bottom of the fretboard. And that actually gives me enough space. I can actually get in on the string with my fingertips as much as I want to. Now I've got fairly large hands. So all of these things become very important to me. Otherwise, I have a hard time playing, even a Stratocaster or an instrument with a large neck. All right. So we've talked about thumb placement. We've talked a little bit about the index finger. if you can look down at your hand and your index finger's pointing right back at your head, try rotating it around a little bit so it's more like over your shoulder, and then you're going to find that your pinky is actually going to be able to reach a lot of stuff that you weren't able to get before. That's the next thing. As far as the bottom of the fretboard goes, we try and make sure that we're not touching it. So, you know, you've got kind of like your thumb and your fingertips are grabbing the guitar, but all the rest of this part of your hand, not so much. So I can give you a better angle here. All right. If you're playing open chords, you know, or bending notes, or playing like some of this funky rhythm guitar where you need to mute a lot of strings, having the angle down is also a good thing. All right. Now, about the fingertips, you know, we try and play on the fingertips as much as we can. It just makes sense that that would be the most accurate thing to do. But the reality is, if I need to make a wide stretch, I'm going to kind of play on the edge of my index finger here a little bit. All right. And then second and third fingers, I play as much on the fingertip as possible. And then the pinky, we're kind of on the edge there too. It's kind of hard to play exactly on every fingertip. Your fingers just aren't going to work that well. So, you know, that's, you know, as far as wide stretches go, that's kind of what happens there. If I'm playing open chords, I keep coming back to the open chords because I'm assuming a lot of you guys are working on stuff like this. You know, you want to play on the fingertip as much as possible. If you start letting joints collapse, all right, where you go from here to like this sort of deal, what happens is that you're going to be pushing sideways on the string. You're going to mute strings on either side of the one you're trying to fret. You could be pressing things out of tune. Yeah, so you want to try and almost think of it like every finger is arched, almost like a little bridge, and it's coming right down onto the string that we want. You know, it's not so much about you know, fancy angles or any of that stuff. You just want to make sure that you're getting every note to sound cleanly. If you're getting a dead note, either see if you're not pressing down hard enough on the string, or if one of your other fingers is touching it from the side and muting it. You know, just move things around until whatever you're trying to do sounds nice and clean. Now, as far as bending notes, the one big thing about bending, and we're actually going to have more of an in-depth deal on this later on, but bends don't come from the fingers. If I'm bending a string, this is where all the movement comes from. There's a lot of power there. You watch it from this side. I'll even back up a little bit. Alright, I can do some pretty wide bends, you know, without actually doing anything with the fingers other than holding onto the string and letting the forearm push the string up. Alright, so as far as this hand goes, the only thing we haven't talked about yet is the idea of bar chords. And when you're playing a bar chord, you're trying to get all of those strings together on one fret. I'll actually get it on this part of the finger here. If you try and play on the bottom of the finger when you're barring, what happens is that all these creases catch the strings and you're not able to push things down real firmly. But your finger doesn't bend this way. Alright, so what happens if you put that on the fret that you want to hear, you're actually going to get everything to sound out. Right? And then you're also going to be a little bit easier, have an easier time actually getting the rest of your fingers, get the rest of the bar chord cleanly. If you try and get it like this, you're going to be stretching this part of your wrist, and you're not, you know, it's just going to be a little bit too difficult to get everything to sound clean. So just remember, you're kind of not square on the front of the finger here, you're kind of on the side.